As the council chamber emptied, the air buzzed with hushed whispers about the enigmatic human diplomat. In the opulent Zaranite quarters, Ambassador Zixkral paced, his chitin-plated limbs clicking against the polished floor. No mere human could grasp the intricacies of Iridiani so swiftly, he hissed to his aides. This Carter is hiding something. Lyra, find out what it is. The lithe Varelian operative nodded, her eyes glinting with anticipation. She slipped into the shadows, determined to unravel the mystery surrounding Peter Carter. In the Spartan confines of his quarters, Carter pored over hollow displays of the Orion frontier, his brow furrowed in concentration. His thoughts drifted to the grueling language lessons under Dr. Voss's tutelage. He recalled the long hours spent immersed in Iridiani databases, parsing the alien syntax and absorbing their culture. The memory of Dr. Voss's fierce intelligence and unwavering belief in his abilities brought a faint smile to his lips. A chime at the door jolted Carter back to the present. He opened it to find Lyra, her expression triumphant. "Ambassador Carter," she purred, "it seems your linguistic prowess is not the only thing you've been hiding." Carter's pulse quickened as Lyra revealed her findings to Zixkral and Murloc. The Supreme Counselor's eyes narrowed. "An investigation is in order," Murloc declared. "We will uncover the truth behind your actions, Carter." News of the inquiry spread like wildfire through the diplomatic complex. As Carter strode through the halls, he found himself face to face with Zixkral. The insectoid's mandibles clicked menacingly. "Your lies will be exposed, human," Zixkral sneered. "No amount of linguistic trickery will save you." B'Shras, Carter met the Zaranite's multifaceted gaze with unwavering determination. "I have nothing to hide, Ambassador. I intend to see these negotiations through, for the benefit of both our peoples." Seeking solace from the brewing storm, Carter wandered into the consortium gardens. Amidst the alien flora, he encountered Zara, an Arak female with an aura of quiet strength. "Your mastery of Iridiani is impressive, Ambassador," she said, her voice melodic. "Not all here share Zixkral's disdain for your kind." As they walked, Carter sensed a potential ally in Zara. But before he could probe further, a pair of Zaranite security officers confronted him, demanding his credentials. Carter stood his ground, invoking diplomatic immunity. The standoff escalated until Lyra emerged, claiming new evidence in Carter's favor. She led the officers away, leaving Carter alone with his thoughts. In the wake of the confrontation, Carter grappled with the realization that every move was being watched, every motive questioned. The weight of his mission pressed upon him, the fate of humanity standing in the consortium hanging in the balance. He knew his linguistic skills would be tested like never before as he navigated the treacherous currents of galactic diplomacy. With a deep breath, Carter steeled himself for the challenges ahead. He would not let suspicion and hidden agendas derail his purpose. The Iridiani language, once an academic passion, had become his most vital tool in this high-stakes game, and he would wield it with all the drive and finesse he could muster. In the heart of the Galactic Consortium's diplomatic complex, Ambassador Zixkral scuttled through the shadows, his compound eyes glinting with malicious intent. He came to a stop outside a nondescript door and tapped his chitin-plated limb against the access panel. The door slid open, revealing a dimly lit room where a group of hooded figures awaited him. "Is everything in place?" Zixkral hissed, his mandibles clicking together. The tallest of the hooded figures nodded. "The evidence has been planted. Carter will be implicated in the theft of the sacred artifacts." Zixkral's mouth parts twisted into a cruel approximation of a smile. "Excellent. Once the human is disgraced, we can proceed with our plans unhindered." Lyra, the Varelian operative, emerged from the shadows, her expression unreadable. She held up a data crystal, its surface shimmering with encoded information. "The proof you requested, Ambassador." Zixkral snatched the crystal from her grasp, his eyes narrowing. "You have done well, Lyra. Your loyalty will be rewarded." As the conspirators dispersed, Lyra lingered, a flicker of doubt crossing her features. She had seen something in Carter's eyes, a sincerity that belied the accusations leveled against him. But the weight of Zixkral's coercion bore down upon her, and she pushed the thought aside. In the council chambers, Supreme Counselor Murloc studied the evidence presented by Lyra, his brow furrowed with concern. The implications were clear. Peter Carter, the once respected human diplomat, stood accused of a heinous crime. "This is a grave matter," Murloc intoned, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We have no choice but to issue an arrest warrant for Ambassador Carter." As the order was given, consortium security forces, led by the grizzled Zaranite commander Voxthar, stormed the human diplomatic compound. They converged on Carter's quarters, weapons at the ready. Inside, Carter paced restlessly, his mind racing. He had caught wind of the impending arrest and knew he had precious little time. With a few deft keystrokes, he hacked into the compound's communication system and took a deep breath. "People of the consortium," Carter began, his voice carried by the hack signal, "I come to you in a moment of great peril. I stand accused of a crime I did not commit, a mere pawn in a game of galactic intrigue." His words, spoken in flawless Iridiani, reverberated through the compound and beyond. Some who heard his plea paused, doubt seeping into their minds. Could this human truly be guilty of such a heinous act? Just as Voxthar's team breached the door to Carter's quarters, a sleek ARAC spacecraft descended from above, its hull emblazoned with the sigil of the Archivist. Carter watched in amazement as the craft's ramp lowered, and a group of heavily armed ARAC agents emerged, the starlight glinting off their polished armor. Amidst the chaos, Carter found himself whisked away, the shouts of Voxthar and his men fading into the distance. The spacecraft soared through the night sky, carrying him to an unknown destination. As the adrenaline of the escape subsided, Carter found himself face to face with a familiar figure, Zara, the AROC female he had encountered in the consortium gardens. Her eyes shone with a fierce intelligence as she regarded him. "Peter Carter," Zara began, her voice filled with a quiet intensity, "there are those who believe in your innocence. I am one of them." Carter leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What do you want from me?" Zara's lip curled into a hint of a smile. "Your help, Ambassador. Together, we can uncover the truth behind this conspiracy and clear your name. But it will not be an easy path." Carter's mind raced with the implications of her words. He knew that accepting Zara's offer would mean plunging headlong into a web of intrigue and danger. But what choice did he have? As the spacecraft hurtled through the void, Carter felt the weight of two civilizations resting upon his shoulders. With a deep breath, he nodded his assent to Zara, his eyes blazing with commitment. The die had been cast, and there was no turning back. The Iraq spacecraft glided silently through the void, its sleek hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside, Carter sat across from Zara, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to start with the underworld," Zara said, her eyes gleaming with persistence. "There are always whispers, if you know where to listen." Carter nodded, his fingers absently tracing the edge of his datapad. "I've got a few contacts from my diplomatic work. Discreet ones." Hours later, they found themselves in a dimly lit tavern on the fringes of consortium space. The air was thick with smoke and the low hum of dozens of alien languages. Carter's eyes scanned the room, finally settling on a hunched figure in the corner. "That's our guy," he murmured to Zara. "Vrak, Varelian informant, not the most trustworthy, but he's got his fingers in every pie." They approached the table, and Vrak's eyes widened at the sight of Carter. "Ambassador," he hissed, "you're a wanted man." Carter leaned in close. "That's why I need your help, Vrak. What do you know about the stolen Iridiani artifacts?" Vrak's antenna twitched nervously. "Meet me in the old warehouse district in an hour. I'll tell you everything." As they left the tavern, Carter's instincts screamed danger. His suspicions were confirmed when they arrived at the warehouse to find Commander Voxthar and a squad of heavily armed Zaranite enforcers waiting for them. "Surrender, Carter!" Voxthar bellowed, raising his pulse rifle. Carter's mind raced, analyzing the layout of the warehouse and the positions of the Zaranites. He spotted a control panel on the far wall and formulated a plan. "Zara," he whispered, "when I give the signal, run for the exit." Carter stepped forward, hands raised. "Voxthar," he called out in flawless Zaranite, "I invoke the ancient right of Khazrak. By your own laws, you must grant me safe passage. The Zaranites hesitated, confused by the humans' knowledge of their obscure customs. In that moment of distraction, Carter lunged for the control panel, his fingers flying over the alien symbols. The warehouse erupted into chaos as security barriers slammed down, separating the Zaranites from their quarry. Carter and Zara sprinted through the labyrinthine alleys of the station's underbelly, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. Days later, their investigation led them to an abandoned Iridiani temple, nestled within a treacherous asteroid field. As they navigated the crumbling corridors, Carter's translator implant struggled to decipher the ancient inscriptions. "Look at this," Zara called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. She held up a data crystal, its surface pulsing with an eerie light. Carter inserted the crystal into his datapad, and his eyes widened as he scanned the contents. "This is it," he breathed, "proof of a conspiracy between corrupt consortium officials and the Pulvian hegemony." Before they could celebrate their discovery, a menacing figure materialized from the shadows. The Brakal assassin's cybernetic implants gleamed in the dim light as it advanced on them with inhuman speed. Zara's genetically enhanced reflexes kicked in as she dodged the assassin's first strike. Carter ducked behind a fallen pillar, his mind racing to find a way out of this deadly situation. The temple shook as the battle raged, ancient stonework crumbling under the force of the combatants. Carter watched in awe as Zara held her own against the cybernetically augmented warrior, her movements a blur of precision and power. Seizing an opportunity, Carter activated the temple's long-dormant defense systems, using his linguistic skills to decipher the control mechanisms. A barrage of energy blasts forced the assassin back, allowing Zara and Carter to make their escape with the vital data in hand. With Zixkral's forces in hot pursuit, they sought refuge on a remote Varelian outpost. As they docked their battered ship, Varak emerged from the shadows, a triumphant grin on his face. "I've got you now, Carter," the Varelian sneered, raising a stun pistol. "The bounty on your head will set me up for life." But before Varak could fire, a blur of motion knocked him to the ground. Karazah, Varak's lieutenant, stood over her former boss, her own weapon trained on him. "Go," she urged Carter and Zara. "I'll hold them off." As they raced back to their ship, Carter's mind reeled with the implications of their discoveries. The artifact theft was just the tip of the iceberg, a ploy in a much larger game that threatened to tear the consortium apart. With Karazah now an unexpected ally, they set a course for their next destination, knowing that the fate of galactic peace hung in the balance. The sleek Varelian freighter emerged from hyperspace, its hull scarred from narrowly avoiding Zaranite patrols. In the cramped cargo hold, Carter pored over star charts with Zara and Karazah, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. "The Rukath Nebula," Carter said, zooming in on a swirling mass of gases and stellar debris. "That's where we'll find our answers." Zara's eyes narrowed. "And likely a trap. The Pulvian stronghold won't be easily breached." Carter nodded, his fingers dancing across the holomap. "Which is why we need help. There's someone I know, someone who might be willing to lend us a hand." Hours later, their ship docked at a nondescript Terran listening post on the fringes of consortium space. As Carter made his way to the communications array, he felt the weight of his mission pressing down on him. The Ansible hummed to life, and a familiar face materialized on the screen. Dr. Eliza Voss, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, regarded Carter with a mix of concern and irritation. "Peter," she said, her voice crackling through the subspace channel, "I hope you realize the risk I'm taking by even speaking with you." Carter leaned closer to the screen. "Eliza, I wouldn't have contacted you if it wasn't crucial. We've uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that goes deeper than anyone imagined." As Carter laid out the details of their discoveries, Voss's expression shifted from skepticism to grim understanding. She input a series of commands, and a set of coordinates appeared on Carter's datapad. "This is all I can do," Voss said. "Use these channels wisely, Peter, and be careful." The transmission cut off abruptly as alarms blared throughout the outpost. Zara burst into the room, her weapon already drawn. "We've got company!" Through the viewport, Carter saw a Zaranite assault shuttle touching down on the landing pad. He cursed under his breath, his mind racing. They must have intercepted the transmission. As Zaranite troops stormed the outpost, Carter's fingers flew across the control panel. His mastery of alien languages allowed him to input override codes, sealing bulkheads and rerouting power to defensive systems. The air crackled with energy weapons fire as Carter and his allies fought their way through the corridors. Charaza's Vorelian combat training proved invaluable, her fluid movements allowing her to outmaneuver the heavily armored Zaranites. Carter's linguistic skills became a weapon in their own right. As they passed a security checkpoint, he shouted a command in the Zaranite dialect, causing the automated defenses to target their pursuers instead. They reached their ship just as a fresh wave of Zaranite reinforcements touched down. The engines roared to life and they blasted away from the outpost, narrowly avoiding the barrage of fire from the surface. As the stars streaked by outside the viewport, Carter slumped into a chair, his adrenaline fading. "We can't go back to consortium space," he said. "Not yet. Zixcrawl will have the entire sector locked down." Karaza nodded, her antennae twitching thoughtfully. "I might have a solution. There's a Vorelian freighter captain I trust, someone who can get us past the blockade." Carter's eyes lit up. "Perfect. If we can just get back to the consortium station, we can present our evidence to the full Galactic Council." As they plotted their course, none of them noticed the sleek Pulvian stealth craft trailing them at a distance, its cloaking field masking it from their sensors. Aboard the consortium station, Ambassador Zixcrawl paced in his private chambers, his compound eyes flickering with terrifying rage. A holographic display showed a fleet of Zaranite warships moving into position around the station. "Deploy the ships under the guise of increased security measures," Zixcrawl ordered his subordinate. "No one gets in or out without my express permission." As the Zaranite blockade tightened its grip, Carter and his allies raced against time, knowing that the fate of the stars hung in the balance. The true test of Carter's diplomatic and linguistic skills lay ahead, as he prepared to navigate the treacherous waters of galactic politics and expose the truth before it was too late. The Vorelian freighter slipped through the Zaranite blockade like a ghost, its sophisticated cloaking technology rendering it invisible to the patrols. Carter stood on the bridge, his heart pounding as they approached the massive consortium station. "Docking procedure initiated," Charaza announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "We'll be inside in 3 minutes." Carter nodded, turning to Zara. "Remember the plan. You and your team disable the security systems. I'll head straight for the council chambers." As soon as the airlock hissed open, they split up. Carter moved swiftly through the familiar corridors, his diplomatic credentials still granting him access to restricted areas. He could hear the distant sound of raised voices. An emergency council session was already underway. In the station's control center, Zara's fingers flew across alien keyboards. "Firewalls breached," she muttered. "Initiating security override, now." Alarms blared in Ambassador Zixcrawl's private chambers. He lunged for the communication panel, barking orders to his security forces. But his words were met with only static. "Impossible!" he hissed, his compound eyes flickering with rage. Realization dawned, and he sprinted towards the council chambers. Carter burst through the ornate doors, datapad clutched tightly in his hand. The assembled diplomats turned as one, a chorus of gasps and exclamations filling the air. "Ambassador Carter," Murloc rumbled, his massive form rising from the central dais. "You dare show your face here?" "Counselor," Carter said, his voice steady, "I have evidence that will change everything." The Zaranite delegation erupted in protests, but Murloc raised a massive hand for silence. "Speak, human, but choose your words carefully." Carter activated his datapad, and holographic displays flickered to life around the chamber. These records prove a conspiracy between corrupt consortium officials and the Pulvian hegemony. Ambassador Zixcrawl is at the center of it all. As if summoned by his name, Zixcrawl burst into the room, flanked by a squad of Zaranite guards. "Lies!" he screeched. "Seize him!" But the guards stood motionless, their neural implants jammed by Zara's infiltration. From the shadows, her agents emerged, surrounding Zixcrawl. The Zaranite's body began to contort, his exoskeleton splitting and reforming. Diplomats scrambled back in horror as Zixkral transformed into a monstrous battle form, towering over even Murloc. "You've ruined everything," Zixkral growled, his voice now a deep, menacing rumble. Before he could strike, a blur of motion crossed the chamber. Zara, her own body shifting and growing, tackled the Zaranite battlelord. The two titans grappled, the floor cracking beneath their tremendous strength. Carter pressed on, his voice rising above the chaos. The artifact theft was just the beginning. The Polvians seek to destabilize the entire consortium, pitting us against each other while they prepare for invasion. As he spoke, the chamber's main view screen flared to life. A vast Polvian armada emerged from the swirling depths of the Rukath Nebula, weapons primed and aimed at the station. Panic gripped the council, but it was short-lived. In a breathtaking display, a Terran battle group decloaked directly in the Polvians' path. Carter allowed himself a small smile. Dr. Voss had come through after all. The station rocked as the two fleets clashed. Carter's comlink crackled to life. Charazah's voice urgent. "Polvian boarding parties have breached the lower levels. We need you down here." Carter turned to Murloc, who nodded grimly. "Go. We'll continue this discussion once our home is secure." As Carter raced from the chamber, alarms blared throughout the station. The true test of his skills and the fate of the consortium lay ahead. In the aftermath of the Polvian attack, the consortium station buzzed with activity. Repair drones swarmed over damaged sections, while diplomats huddled in urgent meetings. At the center of it all stood Peter Carter, his disheveled appearance at odds with the hero's welcome he received. Supreme Counselor Murloc's voice boomed through the council chambers. "In light of recent events, we hereby induct the Terran Alliance as full members of the Galactic Consortium." Applause erupted, but Carter caught the suspicious glances cast his way. He wiped sweat from his brow, acutely aware of the whispers that followed him. "Ambassador Carter," Murloc continued, "you will lead negotiations over the Orion frontier. Your counterpart will be Zindrax of the Kralar." A tall reptilian figure stepped forward, scales shimmering under the chamber's lights. Zindrax's vertical pupils fixed on Carter, assessing. "I look forward to our discussions, Ambassador," Zindrax said, voice a low hiss. As the council adjourned, Carter found himself cornered by a slender, blue-skinned alien. "I am Calaria," she introduced herself, antennae twitching excitedly. "Your linguistic abilities fascinate me. I've discovered artifacts that may interest you." Before Carter could respond, a commotion erupted nearby. Security forces swarmed, surrounding a snarling Zaranite in battle form. "Zixkral," Carter breathed, recognizing the disgraced ambassador. As Zixkral was dragged away, Carter caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. Lyra, the Polvian agent, melted into the throng before he could alert security. Days later, Carter pored over trade proposals in his new office when Calaria burst in. "I've made a breakthrough," she exclaimed, laying out a series of glyphs. "These point to the Iridiani elders. I believe you can decode them." Carter's head swam as he studied the symbols. They seemed to shift before his eyes, hinting at meanings just beyond his grasp. A fragmented memory surfaced. Sterile rooms, endless language drills, faces shrouded in shadow. He shook off the unsettling feeling. "I'll need time to study these." That evening, a reception marked the start of negotiations. Carter mingled with delegates, hyper-aware of the subtle power plays at work. He was mid-sentence with Zindrax when his enhanced senses prickled a warning. Time slowed as Carter's eyes locked onto a hulking figure materializing from the crowd. The Brakal assassin's cybernetic implants whirred as it raised a particle weapon. Carter's body moved on instinct. He tackled Zindrax, energy blasts searing the air where they'd stood. Chaos erupted as security drones swarmed the attacker. In the confusion, Carter spotted a Terran aide slipping a data crystal into her pocket. His stomach twisted as he realized the implications of the insider threat. As alarms blared and the station locked down, Carter found himself at the center of a storm of suspicion and intrigue. The negotiations hung by a thread, and the whispers about his true nature grew louder with each passing moment. As the station's alarm subsided, Carter found himself in a sterile interrogation chamber. Murlock's massive form loomed over him. The Supreme Counselor's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Ambassador Carter," Murlock rumbled, "your recent actions have raised concerns. The Security Council demands answers." Carter's throat tightened. "I've been nothing but transparent." "Then you'll have no objection to submitting to an interrogation probe," Murlock interrupted, "to verify your story and rule out any unexpected connections." Carter's mind raced, weighing his options. Refusal would only deepen their mistrust. He nodded reluctantly. Moments later, technicians fitted him with a complex array of neural interfaces. An unfamiliar blue-skinned alien entered, introducing herself as the examiner. "This is a Vortian mind-viewing device," she explained, her voice oddly familiar. "It will access your subconscious memories." As the device activated, Carter's world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of fragmented images. He found himself reliving his training under Dr. Voss, but something felt off. In one memory, he instantly deciphered a Zarchin text, the alien symbols rearranging themselves in his mind with unnatural speed. Another showed him conversing fluently in a dozen languages simultaneously, far beyond his actual capabilities. Panic gripped him as the contradictions multiplied. His consciousness spiraled, trapped in an endless loop of increasingly distorted recollections. Through the haze, he heard shouting. Ambassador Zara's voice cut through the chaos. "Shut it down! Something's wrong!" Alarms blared once more. The chamber erupted into violence as security forces clashed with concealed Pulvian infiltrators. Energy weapons seared the air, leaving scorch marks on the pristine walls. Carter's mind continued to fracture, lost in the maelstrom of impossible memories. A gentle touch on his forehead pulled him back from the brink of madness. Kelaria's face swam into focus, her antennae pulsing with concentrated effort. "Hold on, Ambassador," she urged. "I'm stabilizing your neural patterns." The world shifted again. Carter found himself adrift in a sea of glowing symbols, pulsing with cosmic energy. Each character seemed to contain entire universes, whispering primordial truths. Kelaria's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "This is the proto-language, the foundation of all communication. Let it guide you back." With a violent jolt, Carter snapped back to reality. The interrogation chamber was in ruins, debris scattered across the floor. Zara helped him to his feet, her eyes wide with concern. "What happened?" Carter croaked, his throat raw. "Pulvian sabotage," Zara explained grimly. "They infiltrated the station, tampered with the device. We barely stopped them from frying your brain." Carter's head throbbed, fragments of the cosmic language still dancing at the edges of his consciousness. He turned to Kelaria, who was studying him intently. "You saved me," he said, "but what did I see?" The alien scientist's antennae twitched excitedly. "The proto-language of the Iridiani elders. It seems to have imprinted on your psyche. This changes everything we thought we knew about human linguistic potential." Carter's stomach churned as the implication sank in. He pulled Zara aside, lowering his voice. I think I might be connected to the elders somehow. These new abilities, they're beyond anything in my training." Zara's expression hardened. "Many will see you as a threat now, but this could be humanity's key role in what's coming." She squeezed his shoulder. "Whatever you decide, I've got your back." As cleanup crews swarmed the chamber, Carter caught sight of the blue-skinned examiner slipping away. He blinked, and for a moment, he could have sworn he saw Lyra's face beneath the disguise. The station's corridors buzzed with rumors and speculation. Carter felt the weight of countless eyes upon him, filled with a mixture of awe and fear. He knew that nothing would ever be the same. Carter leaned against the cool metal wall of his quarters, his legs shaking from the cosmic insights that threatened to overwhelm him. The proto-language pulsed through his consciousness, each symbol a gateway to unimaginable knowledge. A chime at his door startled him from his reverie. Zara entered, her expression grave. "Peter, we need to talk," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Your abilities, they're becoming noticeable." Carter nodded, a pit forming in his stomach. "I know. I can feel it growing stronger every day." Zara's eyes darted to the corners of the room, checking for surveillance. The other races will see you as a threat if this gets out. We need to keep it under wraps while we figure out what's happening to you. Before Carter could respond, his comlink chirped. Kellaria's excited voice filled the room. Ambassador, I've made a breakthrough with the Elder artifacts. We must meet immediately. As Carter made his way to Kellaria's lab, he felt the weight of countless stares. Whispers followed in his wake, fueled by rumors of his interrogation. He caught fragments of conversations, his enhanced senses picking up far more than he wanted to hear. Unstable. Mind control. Elder powers. The lab doors hissed open, revealing Kellaria hunched over a glowing console. Her antennae twitched with excitement as she turned to face him. Ambassador, the situation is dire, she said without preamble. The Triad is convening an emergency session to debate your status. The Pulvians have been spreading disinformation. Carter's blood ran cold. How bad is it? Kellaria's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of fear and fascination. Bad enough that they're considering stripping you of your credentials. But I have a proposal. As she outlined her plan, Carter felt a moral weight settle on his shoulders. The idea of manipulating the Triad's thoughts, even subtly, went against everything he believed in. But as alarms blared and the station rocked with weapons fire, he realized time was running out. Brockle assassins burst through the lab's reinforced doors, their cybernetic implants whirring as they raised particle weapons. Carter's mind exploded with proto-linguistic symbols, each one a key to unlocking the assassin's neural pathways. Without conscious thought, he spoke a single word. The sound reverberated with impossible harmonics, and the Brockal soldiers crumpled to the ground, their minds overwritten by Carter's psionic command. Shaken by the raw power at his command, Carter turned to Kellaria. Set up the meeting with the Triad. We don't have a choice anymore. Hours later, Carter stood before the assembled oligarchs. The Zaranite representatives' compound eyes glittered with suspicion, while the Brockal War Master's cybernetic enhancements whirred as they analyzed Carter's every movement. Only Zindril, the Krauler matriarch, seemed open to discussion. Her scaled head tilted as she regarded the human ambassador. Carter took a deep breath, channeling the cosmic energies that now coursed through him. As he began to speak, his words resonated with hidden frequencies, each syllable laden with subtle compulsions. Esteemed members of the Triad, he intoned, feeling the proto-language guide his speech. We stand at a crossroads of galactic history. As Carter wove his linguistic web, he watched the oligarch's expressions shift. The Zaranites' hostility softened, while the Brockal's defensive posture relaxed. Even Supreme Counselor Murloc, who had remained stoic throughout, began to nod in agreement. By the time Carter finished his address, the chamber's atmosphere had transformed. Where there had been suspicion and fear, now a spirit of cooperation prevailed. The Triad voted unanimously to reaffirm Earth's membership and grant Carter full diplomatic immunity. As the session adjourned, Carter felt a mix of relief and unease. He had averted a crisis, but at what cost? The power to reshape minds was a weighty responsibility, one he wasn't sure he was ready to bear. Zara appeared at his side, her face a mask of concern. It worked, she whispered. But this is just the beginning. The Pulvians won't give up so easily. Carter nodded, his mind already racing with the implications of his actions. As they exited the chamber, he caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. Lyra, her features barely disguised, watching him with a mixture of fear and fascination. The station hummed with renewed activity, diplomats and dignitaries bustling about in the wake of the historic accord. But beneath the veneer of peace, Carter sensed the currents of a deeper conflict stirring. His journey into the heart of the proto-language's mysteries had only just begun. Carter's footsteps echoed through the station's corridors as he made his way to the next Triad session. The weight of his decision pressed upon him, each step bringing him closer to a moment of truth that could reshape the galaxy. Zara fell in step beside him, her face etched with concern. Are you certain about this, Peter? Once you reveal your abilities, there's no going back. He nodded, his mind focused. It's time for transparency. We can't build lasting peace on deception. As they approached the chamber, Carter's mind raced. Unbeknownst to Zara, he had spent the night weaving an intricate psionic web, layering subtle compulsions into the very air of the council room. It was a fail-safe, a way to ensure a favorable response should his honest approach falter. The doors hissed open, revealing the assembled dignitaries. Carter strode to the center of the room, acutely aware of every eye upon him. He took a deep breath, preparing to unleash the carefully crafted speech that would change everything. But as he opened his mouth to speak, a discordant buzz filled the air. Carter's psionic senses reeled, his carefully constructed web of influence unraveling like smoke in the wind. Calaria stood from her seat, antenna pulsing rapidly. "I'm sorry, Ambassador," she said, her voice tight. "We couldn't risk another psychic manipulation." Realization dawned on Carter as he spotted the telepathic dampeners hidden throughout the room. His gambit had been anticipated and countered. Before he could formulate a response, a piercing shriek cut through the air. The Kralar matriarch, Zindral, clutched her scaled head, eyes rolling back as she collapsed to the floor. "Mother!" Zindrax cried out, rushing to her side. The room erupted into chaos as medics swarmed around the fallen diplomat. Carter stood frozen, horror washing over him as he realized the consequences of his actions. The psionic backlash, meant to be a gentle nudge, had instead shattered the delicate neural pathways of the Kralar leader. Zindrax's eyes locked onto Carter, filled with a fury that chilled him to the bone. "You!" he snarled, scales dripping. "Your meddling has killed her!" Security forces moved in, surrounding Carter as accusations flew. The human raised his hands, desperately trying to explain, to find the right words to defuse the situation. But for the first time since acquiring his newfound abilities, language failed him. Alarms blared as the station rocked with weapons fire. Pulvian extremists, seizing the moment of weakness, launched their long-awaited offensive. The council chamber descended into pandemonium as diplomats fled and security forces mobilized. Carter found himself at the eye of the storm, paralyzed by the magnitude of what he had wrought. Zara's voice cut through the din, pleading with Zindrax for reason, but the enraged Kralar was beyond consolation. In that moment of crisis, a terrible clarity washed over Carter. He saw the threads of fate stretching before him, each potential future more dire than the last. There was only one path forward, one way to bring order to the chaos he had unleashed. With a deep breath, Carter closed his eyes and plunged his consciousness into the swirling depths of the proto-language. The physical world fell away as he immersed himself in the transcendent harmonies of creation itself. From this metaphysical vantage point, Carter beheld the tapestry of minds spread out before him, each consciousness a fragile, luminous thread in the cosmic weave. With a thought, he could rewrite reality itself. He hesitated for a heartbeat, the weight of what he was about to do threatening to crush him. Then, steeling himself, Carter reached out with his newfound power and began to sever the threads of opposition. One by one, the minds of those who threatened peace blinked out of existence. Zindrax, consumed by rage. Calaria, her scientific caution twisted to fear. Lyra, her true motives masked behind layers of deception. And finally, Zara, whose faith in him had never wavered. Carter wept as he unmade them, reducing friend and foe alike to empty vessels. The proto-language flowed through him, an unstoppable tide sweeping away all resistance. As the last echoes of conflict faded, Carter opened his eyes to a changed galaxy. The station lay silent, its inhabitants frozen in place, awaiting his command. He projected a single thought, encoded in the primordial language of creation: peace. The word rippled outward, a psychic shockwave that brought all conflict to a halt. Across the stars, weapons fell silent as minds bent to his will. Carter stood alone in the council chamber, the sole remaining consciousness in a sea of dormant minds. He had become a god, the absolute authority over a galaxy united in silent obedience. As he took his seat upon the vacant throne at the heart of the consortium, Carter gazed out at the mute multitudes before him. The ultimate irony was not lost on him. In his quest to bridge the gaps between species, he had silenced them all. A single tear traced its way down his cheek as he contemplated the eternity that stretched before him, the loneliest being in existence, forever burdened with the knowledge of what he had sacrificed to achieve his twisted utopia. The station hummed with the quiet efficiency of a galaxy at peace, but to Carter it was the deafening silence of a prison of his own making. He closed his eyes, allowing the currents of the proto-language to wash over him, knowing that this was only the beginning of his solitary reign.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.